Good afternoon, my name is Cindy.
And I'm Sami. Today we are going to be discussing the assessment of ELL students. What is assessment and what is the purpose of assessment in general?
Assessment is a process for determining the current level of the learner's performance or knowledge. The result of an assessment is used to improve or modify a student's performance or knowledge. Assessments are also used to notify educators of an English learner's strengths and weaknesses to help them place them in a program to support their needs. What is the difference between formative and summative assessment?
Formative assessment monitors the learning to provide feedback about the progress of the student in order to reteach if necessary. It is assessed by self-peer or by the teacher. It is also assessed during the lesson. No grades are given. Summative assessment applies to final grade to the progress of the student. It is assessed usually by the teacher and also at the end of the lesson. Points are assigned to each item. What is cultural bias, and can you give me at least 3 examples of it?
Cultural bias is when a test offends or penalizes students based on their ethnicity, gender, or socioeconomic status. Examples are asking students vocabulary words such as casserole because it's not a common word used in households, asking gender-specific questions, and low nutritional levels can also affect their learning abilities. What are advantages and disadvantages of testing in 2 languages?
Some of the advantages include that teachers can focus on what students need to know. The teachers can also pursue an articulated sequence of instruction, integrating the teaching of English into increasingly sophisticated levels of language and meaningful discourse, fluent communication skills, and cognitive academic language proficiency. Disadvantages include risk of failure, low test scores, and poor achievement. What are some psychological factors to be considered when assessing ELLs?
Student preferences when taking a test, giving students motivation to focus and do their best, learning if the student has anxiety or depression, and learning if they have learning disabilities. How do you assess ELLs to determine if there's a learning disability in addition to a language barrier?
You can start with early intervention. If a student is not responsive to an alternative instructional or behavioral interventions over a period of several weeks or months, there is more of a chance that a placement in a special education will be necessary. Also, a descriptive analysis could be implemented. This would include an oral monologue, an oral dialogue, and an observation of the student in class are used together to determine if a student has a communicative proficiency problem. How do you assess ELLs for giftedness?
By using intelligence and standardized testing. However, these tests unequally measure students' abilities. Even verbalized standardized tests unequally measure students' abilities because students may be unsocial and not respond to questions.
How do you assess writing for ELLs?
ELLs can be assessed for writing through a portfolio assessment, which is a long-term record of students' progress in writing samples. It can be checked weekly or monthly to assess students' strengths and weaknesses. What are some of the limitations of assessing ELLs?
Tests play a significant role in placing and reclassifying English learners. However, oftentimes pressure is applied for programs to redesignate students as fluent English speaking in a short period of time, and tests may be used to place English learners into mainstream programs before they are ready. Although standardized tests are designed to be fair, they are not necessarily well suited as measures of language ability or achievement for English learners. Assessing ELLs can implement anxiety, time limitations, rapport, and cultural differences. How can ELLs use self and peer evaluation?
ELLs can self-evaluate an essay that they feel proud of. The teacher can ask the student to write a short essay of why it is their best essay. Students can also evaluate themselves with a checklist provided by the teacher. ELLs can also share their essay with a partner and share similarities and differences. Depending on the grade, students can have a higher achieving student help check for grammar errors. Explain how a teacher could use language proficiency assessments to inform instruction.
A teacher could emphasize on the testing of decontextualized skills such as sentence level, punctuation, grammar, and spelling to inform instruction.
Give 4 suggestions for assisting ELLs with test-taking skills.
Focus on one question at a time. Read the question carefully, making sure you understand the task that is involved. Read all the answer choices given, especially when the test asks for the best answer. If the question depends on reading comprehension, reread the selection as you considered each question. Provide and discuss 3 specific examples of ways to assess content area learning.
The teacher should only grade the questions the student has completed. Allow students to verbally answer questions while the teacher assesses the student on paper. Use a modified grading scale that grades students on their achievements and improvements. Provide and discuss 3 specific examples of ways to assess literacy skills in reading.
You could use e-portfolios for voice recordings and/or videos, reading aloud to the teacher, and comprehension tests. Explain the difference between assessing ELLs for language proficiency, the use of standardized tests, and classroom assessments.
Assessing ELLs for language proficiency is assessed individually by speaking, listening, writing, reading, vocabulary, and grammar. The proliferation of standardized tests includes punctuation, grammar, and spelling. Standardized tests are used to assess what students have learned in school and are used to compare student scores. Classroom assessments require students to have responses and skills when using language skills and knowledge.